In this section, we're going to be converting between fractions, decimals, and percents. In question 1, we're asked to write 45% as a fraction and as a decimal. There's lots of different ways we could tackle this. I think I'm going to start as writing 45% as a fraction. Remember, we know that percents are out of 100. So if we have 45%, we have 45 out of 100. We could write that as a fraction, 45 out of 100. Now, as always, if we can reduce, we should. So you can put that in your calculator to reduce, or you could also reduce by dividing top and bottom by a common factor of 5. That's going to give me a reduced fraction of 9 over 20. So there is 45% as a fraction. Now let's get it written as a decimal. Like in most math questions, there's a lot of different ways we can get to this answer too. One way would be just to write this as a decimal. 45 out of 100, or 45 hundredths, if written correctly as a decimal, would be 0.45. Because remember, this is the tenth spot and this is the hundredths spot. So the correct way to read this is 45 hundredths, which is exactly the same as that. Another way we could do it is from this fraction. Remember, fraction and division are the same things. So you could grab a calculator and do 9 divided by 20. And 9 divided by 20 is also 0.45. Same thing. So we've confirmed, we know this is for sure the decimal. But I've got even one more way you could do it. The other way you could do this is from the percent, 45%. Because this is out of 100, you can take that 45% and divide it by 100 to get the decimal, which again would give you 0.45. So lots of ways to get to the right answer. It's really just going to depend on what feels the most comfortable to you. And sometimes, depending on where we start, one way might feel better than another. Let's take a look at example 2. We are asked to write 0.008 as a percent and as a fraction. It's currently a decimal. One way that we could change this is from this format, just reading it correctly. So remember, this is the tenth spot, this is the hundredth spot, and this third place value where that 8 is called the thousands spot, or thousandths place value. So we could write this as a fraction by just reading it correctly. Read correctly, that decimal is 8 thousandths. So we would write it 8 1,000ths, 8 over 1,000. That is the fraction that represents the same value as 0.008. Next, we want to write it as a percent. Well, there's a couple different ways to do this. I think probably the easiest way for me would be to write it first as that decimal. Next, we're going to use that idea that percent is always out of 100. So we can take this decimal and multiply it by 100 to find the percent. In this case, it's going to be 0.8%. This one is a little sneaky because that decimal is so tiny, so it's helpful for us to make sure this answer makes sense, that we didn't go the wrong direction here. Let's go back to our fraction. If there were 1,000 questions on the test and you only got 8 of them right, it makes sense that your test grade would be less than 1%. You didn't do so great. If you had 8 out of 100, that would be 8%. So this is even less than that. You only got 8 out of 1,000 correct. So that answer does make sense. Let's take a look at example 3. We're asked to write 7/8 as a decimal and as a percent. We're to round each answer to the nearest hundredth when we need to. Well, I think remembering that 7/8 is the same thing as 7 divided by 8 is probably a good first step. On your calculator, you can just do 7 divided by 8. When you do that, you should be getting 0.875. So that is the decimal for 7/8. Now it does say to round to the nearest hundredth, so our final answer should only have 2 decimal places. So we're going to round this one to 0.88. Now, do we know why I use that 8 there? Remember, when we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, I have to decide, does this 7 go up or stay the same? We look to the number after him to make that decision. If this is 5 or more, the 7 goes up. So 0.88 would be the decimal rounded 2 places. Now it also asked us to find the percent. I'm going to go back to my unrounded answer though, because I don't want to lose any of those digits. To write it as a percent, we can just multiply him by 100. So 0.875 times 100 is 87.5%. Do you see why I used that unrounded answer? If I had used this answer of 0.88, I would have gotten 88%, which is close, but is not correct to the nearest hundredth. Let's try just one more. Here we're given 212%, and we're asked to write it as a mixed number and as a decimal. I'm going to do it first as a decimal, but you could do the fraction first. Take that 212% and let's make it a decimal. So we're going backwards here. So instead of multiplying by 100, here we're going to divide by 100. When you divide it by 100, you're going to get a decimal of 2.12. And that is the decimal that's equivalent to 212%. That seems kind of odd because we haven't seen a ton with a number out here, a whole number out front. And that's because this is more than 100%. More than 100% means we have to have a number here. If it was 100%, we would be 1 whole. This is 200%, which means we have 2 wholes and some extra stuff. Now let's get it written as a mixed number. So from here, if we just read it correctly, it is 2 for my whole number and 12 hundredths. So 12 out of 100. And of course, we need to reduce. So we're going to be able to divide top and bottom by 4 to reduce. Or you could grab a calculator and do it on your calculator. The whole number stays put. We're just reducing 12 over 100. And it's going to reduce to 3 over 25. So here is the mixed number 2 3/25. Again, that's not the only way to do this. We could have started with the percent of 212 and first made it as a fraction. 212% is the same thing as 212 out of 100, because remember, percent's always out of 100. And then rewritten that fraction as a mixed number. To rewrite that fraction as a mixed number, we're going to do 100 into 212. That goes in 2 full times, and we would have 12 out of 100 left. Then we would again have to reduce that fraction, and he's still going to reduce to 2 3/25. Either way, you get the same answer. From here, you could then do the decimal. You would have 2 as the whole number, and then do 3 divided by 25 on your calculator, and you get 0.12. So there's the decimal. Lots of different ways to tackle these. And there's really no right or wrong. It just kind of is what feels the most natural to you. Sometimes it's easier to go to the decimal first. Sometimes it's easier to go to the fraction first.